Hello, everyone. I am your host, Bernard Hines, aka the Laugh Therapist, and welcome to the PTSD Processing Traumatic Situation Differently podcast. Here, we try to inform, enlighten, and become advocates for one another as we learn more productive ways to process our trauma. Always remember, as a therapist, I am not licensed, I am just medicated. Welcome to the Stigma Free Zone. Good day, everybody. Good day, everybody. Listen, y'all, we have an awesome show on today. I have Miss Nicole Smith. Miss Nicole Smith, I am going to bring her on the screen right now. Hello, Miss Nicole. How are you doing today?
I am doing so well, Bernard. How are you?
I'm doing well, y'all. Miss Nicole, we met at This Is My Brave. Uh I think is an organization where you talk about how brave you are and what you've been through and how you have survived. And it was great meeting you, and I'm glad to have you on this podcast. Listen, y'all, she is a retired Coast Guard woman. Oh, I don't know how y'all say it, Coast
Coast
Guardy, but
Guardsman, still good.
okay. So introduce yourself to the people, Miss Nicole.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. As Bernard said, I am Nicole Smith, and I am a retired Coast Guard veteran. Served 20 years, went in straight out of high school,
Mm-hmm.
did all those things, met my husband while serving in the military as well. But I decided in 2019 to retire. And a lot of that actually had to do with my mental health.
Okay.
Yeah, so like as you were saying, we met through This Is My Brave, which is a wonderful organization that created a platform for individuals to be able to share their stories of mental health. And that was actually the first place that I really started vocalizing in a platform so large about
Okay.
my mental health.
Good. Oh wow. Hey, listen, that was a powerful platform that we had to be able to
Yes,
speak and meet other veterans. And we never thought it would be avenues like this, to
exactly,
be able to
exactly.
further. So we're going to jump right into this interview because she has a lot of knowledge. If you don't mind, if you speaking about your own PTSD experience and how you processed it.
Yeah, so that was interesting. And it was actually kind of funny. With that This Is My Brave platform, that was actually part of my sharing, and that was while serving in the military, it was right around like 2015, like my mental health just tanked.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself being hospitalized.
Mm.
And that's when I was formally diagnosed with like anxiety and things like that. And they sent me to a therapist, and that therapist sat me down and were like, well, you've got PTSD. And I was like, no,
No.
I don't. Like, that is for, soldiers that are overseas that have
Yes.
seen some crap. And I'm in the Coast Guard and I haven't seen that stuff. Like, I don't have PTSD. Like, I
Correct.
don't know what you're talking about. And that is really when I had my eyes opened to
Okay.
just exactly what PTSD is, and that it isn't just for wartime veterans, and that it can stem from so many different, outlets and traumas and things that have
Mm-hmm.
happened. And lo and behold, it was as we began talking and peeling back all of those layers that we were able to pinpoint that my PTSD was actually linked to something that happened far before I actually joined the service.
Wow.
And that things that were kind of starting to happen and transpire over that time was starting to trigger it
Okay.
and, stir things up, which was causing the anxiety and all of that excess stress.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's, kind of how that initial diagnosis of PTSD came about.
Okay.
But how I processed it, obviously initially not very well.
We all start. Hey,
Yeah,
we all started that way. Correct.
right.
Correct.
A lot of denial, a lot of like, no, I don't need that stigma. I don't need that
Yes.
attachment. Right. Especially being in the military. The
Okay.
last thing that military members, and I'm not sure how it is in the other branches, but for the Coast Guard, it is very concerning. Like you don't want to have any mental health diagnoses, or there's that fear that if you do, that it is going to somehow, in some way, shape, or form, impact your career.
Yes.
That there's not going to be advancements, that
Mm-hmm.
you won't be able to carry
Your weapon. Oh,
well, your weapons, or like your top secret or
that,
secret clearances
that's
and
the
things like
main
that,
one.
which for me in the Coast Guard, I didn't carry a weapon. Like,
Okay.
I was in the operations center and I was the one that had all of those high clearances. And that was my fear, was
Mm-hmm.
that if they found out, or if that something happened, they're going to think that I'm crazy and that I'm not capable of carrying this level
Mm-hmm.
of clearance. So yeah, there was a lot of that around there. Um, but like, I would say how I actually began processing it was, one, that breakdown
Okay.
happening.
Okay.
That was kind of like that turning point, was having somebody actually recognize and say like, hey, you're not okay,
Correct.
but it's okay to not be okay.
Say that again.
It is okay to not be okay.
There you go.
And I live, and I like, that is one of my my own driving like
Correct.
components. Like, that's what keeps me going every day, is like, I know that I don't have to be okay, but I can still be here, I can still function.
Mm-hmm.
um but it was because of that that I actually started working with life coaching.
Okay.
And it was more so because the therapist that I was seeing through the service, like, they work for some people, like therapy and counseling, um, all of that. Psychiatry is great. Like, I work with a psychiatrist counselor now, but
Mm-hmm.
while I was in the service, it wasn't working for me,
Correct.
and I needed to find something that would. And so I started doing research of like how I can go about stuff, and that's how I came across life coaching.
Mm.
And it was while with working with a life coach that really created that 180 shift for me.
Okay.
And I will say that the reason why is because that person opened up and talked to me about their issues.
Okay. Got it.
Because like with psychiatry or counseling, you're the one spilling the beans,
Correct.
and they're
You
just jotting down notes.
right.
And you see them jotting down notes and you feel like you're just crazier, and like, or like, why are they taking these notes? Who are they going to share this with?
Okay.
But with my coach, I felt like, one, they heard me.
Okay.
Two, they validated me. Three, I felt safe sharing all of that stuff with them because they had experienced their own
Correct.
trauma, and they were there functioning now. They
And that's
were like this hope for me that I could get through it just the same.
correct. And that's powerful. You said that. You said you trusted them.
Yes, and
And,
you
and
have to.
you have to. And that's when me and you, when we are speaking to veterans and people, we have to know, do you trust me with your story, with what you went through?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Having that as like a foundation is a must,
Correct.
because otherwise, that's like, we start to internalize it, we start to harbor it in, and we start to, cling on to those stories that nobody's going to understand, or
Mm-hmm.
this is just my mess, and this just must be the way that I am.
Right.
And, we make up all of that
All of
darkness.
it.
So,
And while you was going through all this, you was a wife and a mom.
yes, I was. Yep.
Wow.
So that 2015 timeline, let's see, I had been in the Coast Guard for 16 years already at that
Okay.
time. Um, there had probably been a lot of different things already that should have been red flags for me, but
Okay.
I just pushed them aside.
Right. That's what we do.
Yeah, but at that 2015 timeline, um, I was stationed at what was probably my most toxic command that I had
Okay.
ever had. So the command was just not good. I was on permanent night shifts. So for
Mm.
4 years straight, I worked from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Ooh.
My husband, who I said earlier, we met in the Coast Guard. So he was on the same exact schedule as I was, but opposite. So we did 2 days on, 2 days off sliding weekends. And we did it opposite so that we wouldn't have to pay for childcare.
Ooh, that's
So
enough right
literally,
there.
yeah, literally, we're just like passing the kids off. And that was the only time that we saw each other.
Wow.
I would drop them off to daycare or to school, go home, sleep for maybe 3 hours before I had to go get my youngest from like his preschool, then try to put on TV so that I could sleep a few more hours before I went back to work.
Wow.
So like for 4 years straight, I'm essentially single momming it
Okay.
because my husband's
Right.
working and he's single dadding it when I'm at work,
Correct.
so solo parenting, trying, to raise a family, trying to succeed and excel with, being a Coast Guardsman. And at that time, I was a chief. So I was an E7 at that time, advanced while I was there, somehow by the grace of God, advanced to senior chief while I was there.
Wow.
Um, but that actually ended up being my saving grace. Initially, when we got stationed there, the plan was for me to do my 4 years, request a 1 year extension, and retire and be done.
Correct. Okay.
But because the command was so toxic, and that's when the hospitalization started, that's when a lot of my diagnosis started. I told my husband, I was like, I have to get out of here. Like,
Okay.
if I don't get out of here, it's not going to be good.
Right. Wow.
So luckily, me advancing was my saving grace because it forced us to have to transfer for my advancement.
I'm glad you
Um,
recognize that. I am truly glad you
yeah.
recognize that.
Well, but and here's the thing. So we transferred. I went into a completely different type of environment where my command was phenomenal.
Okay.
I worked Monday through Friday. I was in a training position. So I was instructing and overseeing these, like, my junior instructors. So it was like classroom time, Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 3. And I was still having anxiety attacks on my way to work.
Wow.
I remember at one point calling one of my lieutenants. I was like, I'm not coming in. I'm on my way over to the Naval Hospital. And I was like, I will call you back. And I got to the hospital. I literally thought I was dying.
Hmm.
And like my heart had never hurt so bad. And I get there and they're, going through the all the motions and all that stuff, and get to like the final component. They're like, all right, well, you had an anxiety attack.
I had plenty of those. Yep. Yeah, I know.
I'm like, but no, I was like, I'm not stressed.
Right.
Like, I'm sleeping. Like, I
Hmm.
swear, like, I'm sleeping more than I have slept in the last 5 years. Like, I'm sleeping,
Wow.
I'm good. And that doctor, he's like, Nicole, he's like, you have to listen and recognize. He's like, you just went from firing on all pistons
Okay.
to firing on none.
Mm.
He's like, you have to have a balance. You have to have a balance. He's like, to go from like all this chaos and nonsense to nonstop, your body still doesn't know what to do with that.
Hmm.
Like, you have to have just enough stress that keeps you going and keeps you functioning, and all that stuff. And that was another great lesson learned for me.
Okay.
That just because things look okay and things have calmed down doesn't mean that, again, that they're okay.
Wow.
Um,
Mm.
but it was in that, in all of that, that I recognized, I was like, okay, well, if I'm still at a good command and I'm doing better, but my mental health is still struggling, I was like, babe, I was like, I'm done. I was like, I feel like this is the end for me. I've
Correct.
come to a point where my mental health is suffering, and it's a lot of it is connected to me being here in the service. I was like, I'm done. And so that's kind of where that decision to retire came from for me.
Wow. I just want to congratulate your husband for just being there, and
Absolutely.
understanding,
My
because
champion.
for
Yeah.
those 4 years y'all went through, you said back and forth. Woo, woo, I know that was rough.
Well, and I mean, we're sharing my story. Like, if I even shared my husband's, and he
Correct.
doesn't talk about it. He's
Okay.
that person that's very quiet, very introverted.
Okay.
Stores all of his stuff in. Like, I have to like pry it and be like, "Are
Correct.
you
Correct.
okay?" But I mean, I can't even imagine for him. But
Correct.
because, like, for us, because we were a dual Coast Guard family, the majority of the time that meant that he had to be the one deploying.
Correct.
So he was
Ooh.
gone and underway serving on our ship. So he was gone the majority of our marriage, the
Okay.
majority of our children's lives, to be able to keep us co-located.
Wow.
And so, like, talk about sacrifice and
Yeah.
talk about, this strain on, mental health and everything and all the stuff that he has gone through.
Hmm.
It's a lot.
Correct.
And so that, again, was another component. I was like, look, like, you have been following me my entire career because I was the more senior member. I was like,
Hmm.
you're making sacrifices for me to continue to have my career, like, just soar while yours is here staying stagnant in support of me.
Wow.
And
That's
so
beautiful.
not only was it the mental health, but like also realizing the sacrifices, like I've got to get out so that you can, get to where you should be. But unfortunately for him, in that last time where we were in Virginia, which is actually where you and I met,
Hmm.
he was stationed again on another ship where he was gone, 3, 4, 5 months at a time, and started getting really bad back issues. And it's just that
Okay.
constant for him in the Coast Guard. He was one of our small boat operators. So you imagine going out on a jet ski, right? Like that jarring impact if you've ever been boating,
Right.
but imagine that impact for 20 years on your back and just that jolting and that shaking your
Wow.
spine, your bones are not meant to take that type of, impact. And
That's
so he started having
deep.
some severe back issues. And then that's when he decided to retire and all of that stuff is just because his body was like falling apart. While my mind was falling apart, his body was falling apart.
Wow. Listen, y'all, we are talking to Miss Nicole Smith, a 20-year Coast Guardsman, talking about her experience with PTSD and her military experience and how she
Thank you.
processed it. And one way she processed it, she's the CEO of Navigate Your Freedom.
Mm,
Tell
yes,
us
sir.
about Navigate Your Freedom.
Oh, goodness. So, Navigate Your Freedom is actually my baby and was birthed out of my trauma.
Okay.
We talked about how I began to process trauma differently was through coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And when I recognized that, and I was like, holy cow, within such a short time, I was sharing about my experiences. I felt comfortable. Like I felt this weight come off of me
Okay.
that, was all that suppressed trauma and all that suppressed, like the burden of it that I had carried for so long. Being able to talk and share about that, I recognized as like, this is needed.
Mm-hmm.
People need this.
That's right.
And so I then became a licensed life coach myself,
Okay.
went through all of the trainings and things like that. And initially, when I started Navigate Your Freedom, it was specifically talking only about mental health,
Okay.
and wanting to help people through that. But as you say with your slogan, and it's like, I'm not a therapist, I'm just, medicated. Um, and that we kind of I had to recognize like this disclaimer as well, because I would get a lot of people that would come to me, but I was like, I'm not a therapist,
Correct.
or I'm not licensed or capable to handle this. So I kind of had to shift and pivot a little bit.
Okay.
And then started focusing a lot on military women. And I was like, there's a lot in that, with that burnout of trying to do the things and all of the things. And, like, as we were talking about with my story, I was serving, I was trying to be
Right.
a mother, I was trying to be a wife, I was trying to be a friend, I was trying to da da da
Superwoman.
da da.
Yeah.
Exactly. And when trying to do all those things, you burn out. So I was then focusing on the military women. But recently I've pivoted. My business right now, if you try to go to, is kind of on hold because we're in another pivot.
Okay.
And that's just because I've recognized that it's not just military. It's
That's
all of
true.
us.
That's
All of
right.
us try to put so many eggs in our baskets and try to like assume that everything's going to be okay and that we're going to be able to complete all of these tasks. But then we get so upset when something either doesn't work out or, one of those eggs drops and it just
Correct.
shatters. And so I really started to look not only at my story, but of a lot of those that I have been working with in the past and try to look at the similarities. And it was just that is like, maybe I don't, let me know if you've heard this, but
Okay.
in the military or even anywhere, have you been told to do more with less?
Yes.
Right. And what type of weight does that carry for you?
A lot.
Right. It's usually like this horrible negative connotation. I can't
Correct.
imagine how many times I was told that in the military is like, oh, well, we don't have a budget. Oh, well, we don't have the people.
Hmm.
Just suck it up, do it, do more with less.
And you know what, though? We are trained to get the mission done regardless.
Absolutely. But at what cost?
That right. At what cost? You're
At what
right.
cost?
You're right.
And so I started peeling that back and I was like, okay, me doing more with less came at the cost of my relationships,
Okay.
of, my children sacrificing, because they weren't really having their needs met. I was there. They had a house, you know, a roof over their head. They had food on
Hmm.
the table and things like that. But they didn't get to have the friendships that I had when I was a kid. You know, they didn't have the stability of not having to change schools and all that things and a lot of stuff. So when I started peeling that back, I was like, okay, this more with less concept really isn't working that way.
Got
And
it.
so I was like, how can I flip the script? How
Okay.
can I shift this? And so right now, what I'm kind of building behind the scenes is empowering, and I still work with women predominantly, but is empowering individuals to do more with less,
Mm.
but to do more of what makes them happy, do more of what actually
Mm.
fulfills you, do more of what brings you joy,
Okay.
do more of what like your soul is screaming and wanting and needing, and with less guilt, with less shame, with less, you know, weight and burden or of feeling or fueling into other people's expectations. Like let that nonsense go and focus on what you need more of to sustain yourself.
Wow.
So that's really kind of like what I'm working on, to be able to flip that dynamic, to flip that script on something that carries so much negative weight in my life, and being able to go forward and by empowering people to do it, but just do it in a better way.
And you know what? That's powerful that you saw navigate your freedom needs to shift.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Is nothing wrong with shifting. And that's
No,
what a lot of us in in the military, I think we get caught in doing it one way. You know
absolutely.
what I'm saying? And no, this is the way we've always done it. No, let's shift. Maybe we can do it better. Maybe we can help more people.
Exactly. And that's a good point too, because there was that kind of feeling that I was getting. I was like, my business is failing, or like, why, like, I don't feel like this is good enough, or something's happening. Like, why do I feel like it's always changing? But then I recognized, and I had somebody, a coach that I
Okay.
still work with, was like, Nicole, no, you're just continuously doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that you do the work, you're peeling back more and more layers. You're creating more experience. You're creating more depth. And so you're getting to levels now that like you can actually help people through, so that, you know, when you started Navigate Your Freedom, you could only focus on this little piece because
Mm-hmm.
that was the only piece that you had worked on. You know, so then as you continue, you should be able to see your business change and grow and evolve and adapt and pivot. And I was like, okay, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Like, this is totally okay for my business to, you know, shift and change and
Mm-hmm.
things like that over time, because I don't ever want to stop working on myself.
Correct.
You know, I don't ever want to get back to where I was.
Yes. Right.
And so when I recognized that, I was like, okay, like this isn't a bad thing if my
Mm-hmm.
business is changing or things are adapting or if things get put on hold, which right now I'm in a big season of, you know, doing the inner work again.
Okay.
So that's why you don't see a lot in my business, is because I recognize the posting on social media and trying to be there and be present was again taking away from something from me. Like I was getting anxious again. So I
Okay.
had to kind of put that on pause while I did that work. And I
Wow.
feel like we all need to see that. We all need to be able to recognize, like, I don't have to be in the forefront all the time and prove to people I'm okay. Like, you should recognize that, like, again, this is my piece. I'm doing what I need to by taking a break and recognizing, okay, I don't need to be on social media right now. So,
Wow, you coaching me for free. You coaching me for
amen, brother.
free. That
Amen.
that part, that part you say about being anxious.
Yeah,
Oh, yes. Or feel like
yeah,
you have to post or you have to respond.
right.
Yes.
That was one of
Sometimes
those
I just
things,
be like,
like, going back to my more with less, is I felt like I had to do more and more in my business. I had to be on LinkedIn. I had to be on Facebook. I had to be on Instagram. I had to do this. I had to broadcast and go live every single day.
mm-hmm.
No, I don't.
Right.
No, I don't.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
I can't even tell you how many lives I'm impacting right now, not necessarily through Navigate Your Freedom, but just in the component of showing up with my experience of coaching, or the doors that it has opened in the past from building that. And we're going to be talking about another piece of that here in a minute.
Yes.
But because of where I showed up in the past, kind of planted seeds that are now blooming.
Okay.
And so, yeah, don't be afraid to kind of
Don't be
take a step
afraid.
back.
And listen, another way that Miss Nicole processed her trauma, she wrote a book,
That I did.
The
That I did.
Decision to Heal.
Yes.
Go on, put it up
So
there.
Yeah, the decision to heal, pathways from suffering to love.
I love that
Another
part. Pathways from
pathways from
suffering to
suffering to
love.
love.
Wow.
Absolutely. And it's another one of those babies, one of
Mm-hmm.
those things that you just, knew needed to come forward. It started out as I knew that I wanted to write a book.
Okay.
Um, and so I started working with actually a writing coach. And I got about 4 to 5 chapters in, and I was just like, this hurts.
Mm.
I don't know if I'm ready. It was stirring up so much
Okay.
stuff in me. And she's like, it's okay. Like, let's just put it on hold. But I kept having dreams, like
Mm.
vivid dreams, and that this book needed to come out. And so I was in conversation with some friends of mine, and hearing their stories, I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. I was like,
Correct.
it's
Okay.
not just about my story. Like my story can impact some, but it's not going to impact everybody. And I was like, there's so many different pathways to
Mm-hmm.
healing. Healing is not linear. And that's exactly what you're going to find in this book is that
Okay.
it's not only my story, but a collaboration of mine and 5 others, all sharing our stories of how we overcame our traumas and how we processed it differently,
Okay.
and we came out on the other side. We navigated through that suffering to find self-love, to find compassion, to find healing. um, and another component that I really love about this book is not only do you get to read our 6 individual stories, but all of us in some way, shape, or form are either coaches
Mm.
or influencers in some way, shape, or form. So we took all of our experience and we actually created like a tool book in the back. So in the back of the book, it actually has exercises, or it has journaling prompts. It has words or positive affirmations. A lot of the tools and the resources that we use individually to find our pathway to love, we share with you in the back so that you can begin your journey.
Wow. And if people wanted to find that book, where can they find that book at?
You can find it on Amazon or Barnes
Okay.
and Noble. So, yep. So you're more frequent flyer type places. And if they're interested in getting an autographed copy, I know Bernard will probably put my email address out there for you. So feel free to email me and I'll send you a autographed copy.
All right. The decision to heal. The decision to heal. And listen, y'all, she is doing some great things. Like you said, she is pivoting. She's doing different things. She's trying to, as people say, rebrand. I say repurpose. Because
Yes,
sometimes your purpose, like, okay, now what is my purpose? Once you find
absolutely.
right. So she is working with an organization called Rosie Network, Service to CEO.
Yes.
She told me a little bit about this and it blew my mind. So these are resources, y'all. As I say on this podcast, PTSD, Processing Traumatic Situation Differently, we have to have resources. And she's going to give us some resources right now.
Yeah, so I'll give you a kind of a quick down and dirty snapshot of it. But the Rosie Network is a nonprofit organization that started with the kind of concept of wanting to empower and support our military members in their journey to become entrepreneurs.
Okay.
So this program is for the military member, the veteran, and the spouses. There's a bunch of different parts of it. Service to CEO is just one component. And
Okay.
the service to CEO portion is actually a 12-week program that is free, a free resource
Free.
to military members or spouses, that you just go on and find. You'll do an application, you'll be interviewed, and then you'll be assigned to a cohort that is a 12-week program that actually takes you from being able to like find your vision, your mission, and your why, all the way through to the 12 weeks where you have completed a finalized pitch deck,
Okay.
where you can then go out and begin to pitch your business to either those that you're needing funding from, to be able to find other businesses to work and collaborate with, or to find your customers. And what's great is that at graduation, the Rosie Network will then actually broadcast each of those pitch decks. So they're then being able to put their information out across all of the Rosie Network's platforms to be able to kind of get some free advertising and some promotion of what this business is, which is fantastic.
Oh, yes.
So if you are a military member or spouse who has got an entrepreneurial spirit or has like this vision, you've got to check out the Rosie Network Service to CEO program. They also are getting ready to bring back the Rosie List,
Okay.
which is kind of like if you look at like Angie's
Angie's
List or
List,
like
correct.
all of those places where it shares all of these amazing resources and puts them into one platform, that's going to be the Rosie List. So it will be verified veteran-owned businesses that
Wow.
the Rosie Network has vetted and put out there, and they are recommending. So the Rosie List is going to be going back as live around June timeframe, and you don't have to go through the program to be able to have your business advertised on the Rosie List, which is really cool.
Wow.
Another thing that I will share with that is there's also different components for the Rosie Network. I went through what was called just the Rosie program. So it was female business owners only.
Okay.
But I am now a chapter lead. So I am now teaching. I was alumni of the program. Now they brought me on as staff to teach and facilitate this 12-week program. And the one that I am associated with is actually in partnership with the Wounded Warrior program. So the Wounded Warrior program has so many other members that are coming to them that are looking for resources of how to start their business or what to do next as they're, exiting and leaving the service. So in partnership with the Rosie Network and Wounded Warrior program, I am now facilitating a program where it's men and women in the same cohort going through this 12-week program.
Wow.
And the program that I have right now currently has 25 members, all the way from ones that are like, they're looking for government funding and government contracting, like big mission, to ones that are like looking to maybe just start Airbnbs, or they're starting with a new product line, and things like that. So it's really cool, really amazing. And they also, I'll leave with one last thing about the Rosie Network. If you have a military child who has this entrepreneurial spirit about them, they have the Kidpreneur program.
Wow.
And so it is a condensed, more child-friendly service to CEO type program for kids.
Wow. Listen, y'all. Miss Nicole Smith has given us some John Brown, as I say, some great resources, y'all. Navigate Your Freedom, her book, The Decision to Heal, and Rosie's Network. Wow, that is great. Now, if you could give us just a small synopsis, how did your faith play a part in this?
Oh my gosh. My faith was instrumental. It was the driving component.
Okay.
And that was actually a part of my pivot with my business, is because I was recognizing that that was not a part of my story that I was sharing. And as my world was falling apart back in 2015, and I was going through all those initial hospitalizations, I felt the urge to actually go back to church.
Okay.
I went to a private Christian school from preschool to 8th grade, but my relationship to church was most of the time going only if my friends went. It wasn't something that I did on the weekends with my family.
Right.
Then joining the military, I didn't go. So when all that stuff was happening, I actually felt this calling to go back to church. And I can't tell you how many times I was the person hiding in the very back, ugly crying and falling apart and finding my healing.
Wow.
There is a song, maybe the artist Corey Asbury, and he has this song called Reckless Love. And that song just spoke to me, and it was a song that the worship team sang quite often, and I couldn't even sit and listen or even hardly mumble the words for so long without breaking down. And this song talks about like how God went out and left the 99 for the one. And I was like, I'm the one. He's bringing me back.
That's great.
Yes, my faith and coming back to the Lord and coming back to that as my core, my foundation was instrumental in my healing. And I don't know how I could have done it without it.
That's great, y'all. Listen, this is Miss Nicole Smith. She is a 20-year Coast Guardsman, and we are great. We are proud to have her, and I'm proud
Thank
to
you.
know you. Give the people your email address.
Yes, so you can find me, and it's pretty easy, Nicole, Nicole, at navigateyourfreedom.com.
Nicole at navigateyourfreedom.com. So go ahead, email her if you want a copy of the book. The book is on Amazon. You can go and get it. It is a great, great read. I want to thank you again for being here, and we are coming down to our last minute. So if you can just give a minute, and just less than a minute, and give the people just something to help them keep going.
So across from me, I actually have this plaque that's posted on my wall. You might be able to see this one that's you're not unable to make out, but this one says your story matters.
Oh,
But the one that's across from me is that there is gold in every piece of your story. So
that
don't
is
ever
gold.
stop. Don't ever give up on yourself, because there is gold and there is beauty in your mess.
Wow. Listen, y'all, we have been talking to Miss Nicole Smith, and I want to thank her for being here. And I just want to say right now, you are released from the stigma-free zone.
Thank you so much, my friend. I'm so happy to be here.